Sharp Tongue Podcast. Beep, 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 beep. You're listening to the Sharp Tongue Podcast. I'm your host, Jessimae Peluso. It's a personal look. Well, it's not really a look because it's a podcast. I'm already fucking this up. This is kind of like a verbal comedy diary, a deep look into the crevices of my mind. It's gonna get dirty. You might cry. You probably laugh. Hopefully you'll laugh. The whole point is for you to laugh, but you also might cry. I talk about my family. I talk about farts. I talk about love, loss, comedy, how hard it is to make it in this biz. I'm a fucking professional. Each week it's something different. Sometimes I have a guest host. Sometimes it's gonna be a movie companion episode. Sometimes I just ramble about the bullshit I dealt with the week before. You never know what you're gonna get. It's raw, uncut, and funny. It's me. Hey everybody, another week of the Sharp Tongue Podcast. Even through my own trials and tribulations, I have to push forward and continue and put creativity out there and make myself feel like I am contributing. So this is a really exciting episode for me. You guys know how much I talk about brain health ever since losing my dad in 2018 to Alzheimer's disease. It really pushed me to live a healthier life and learn a little bit about this brain that controls everything I think, do, and feel. So this episode is very, very exciting for me. I am going to be talking with a man who has been a psychiatrist for 40 years, which, judging by his photos and how he looks, seems impossible because he looks so youthful, but we're going to learn all about that. He's also a multiple New York Times best-selling author and just a really interesting dude, and I'm excited to have him on the podcast. I don't know if he's been called dude this many times, but he's going to get used to it. Please welcome Dr. Daniel Amen. Hi.
What a joy to be with you. Thank you so much.
I'm so excited. And everybody who's watching this podcast is going to be able to tell like how nervous I am to be talking to you. This is really cool. I'm blown away by something that I never considered in psychiatry. I've never seen a psychiatrist, but just in the field of psychiatry, the limit or lack of actually looking into the physical organ.
Yeah, it's sort of insane when you think about it. Psychiatrists are the only medical doctors who virtually never look at the organ they treat. And because of it, they come up with all these crazy ideas and you can hurt people. I decided to be a psychiatrist when I was a second-year medical student, and someone I loved tried to kill herself. Oh. And I took her to see a wonderful psychiatrist, and I came to realize if he helped her, which he did, it wouldn't just help her, that ultimately it would help her children and even her grandchildren, as they would be shaped by someone who is happier and more stable. But I fell in love with the only medical specialty that never looks at the organ it treats. And I knew it was wrong, and I knew it would change. I just had no idea I'd be part of the change.
A huge part of the change. 87,000 scans that you've done. Is that a close number?
Actually, it's 160,000. One of my most popular TED Talks was the most important lesson from 83,000 scans. But that was in 2013. So since then, we've doubled the number of scans we've done. And they've just taught us so many important things. Like, let's stop calling these things mental illnesses. Yes. Because they're not. They're brain health issues. And, you know, no one wants, and I've hated the term for 40 years because it stigmatizes people. It shames them, and it's wrong. These are brain health issues that steal your mind. And if we can just get this one idea, it radically changes everything. You talked about your dad who had Alzheimer's disease. Well, most people don't know Alzheimer's disease is a lifestyle disease. Right. That if you're not physically healthy, your brain is an organ, just like your heart is an organ, or your liver, your skin, they're all organs. If your brain's not healthy, then it's not going to do healthy things like remember the important people in your life or make good decisions And I just published a study on 35,000 scans that showed as people's weight went up, the function of their brain went down. And I published it in the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease. And the editor-in-chief said really nice things about my research, but he mostly said, this goes to show that Alzheimer's disease is a lifestyle disease. And if we don't get our lives right, we're going to continue to lose our minds.
And when you talk about lifestyle, what does that encapsulate to you?
So in my books, I have a new book called The End of Mental Illness. And I talk really clearly. If you want to keep your brain healthy or rescue it if it's headed to the dark place, you have to prevent or treat the 11 major risk factors that steal your mind. And it's really my Alzheimer's prevention program, but it means you got to get your diet right. You need to exercise. You need to stop eating bad food, eat foods that are good for you. Alcohol is not a health food. And basically, I can summarize brain health in 3 words. I horrified myself when I figured out, it's 3 words. Word number 1 is care. And I love it.
Kale?
You are care.
Oh, I was like, I love kale.
No. Well, kale is good, right? Kale is one of those foods that you love that loves you back.
Yes.
And I don't know if you've ever been in a bad relationship, but I've been in
just got out of one, Doc.
But I've been in bad relationships, and I'm not doing that anymore. I'm just not, and I'm damn sure not doing it with food. Right? I'm only going to love food that loves me back. But anyway, so it's 3 words, care, C-A-R-E. When I started looking at the brain, I scanned myself, and then I scanned my 60-year-old mother, who had a better looking brain than I did.
And how old were you at the time?
37. And I was horrified, but it fit her life. She has 7 children, 50 grandchildren, great-grandchildren. She knows everybody's birthday, everybody's name. She's everybody's best friend. I mean, she's just the most consistently reliable person on the planet. But my brain sort of looked like crap because I played football in high school. I had meningitis when I was a young soldier. But 30 years later, my brain's fuller, fatter, healthier, because I do the things I tell my patients to do. And so I came up with this term, brain envy. I wanted my mother's brain. And I always say, Freud.
You sound like a zombie.
But I say Freud was wrong. Penis envy is not the cause of anybody's problem. I've not seen it once in 40 years. It
happens between girlfriends. Like if we, because we do send photos and sometimes we're envious of our girlfriends. Man, we're like, okay, go ahead.
Well, I've not seen it as a problem, but very few people love and care for their brains. I'm so happy you do. I mean, it's going to make a significant difference through the rest of your life. And then the second word is stop doing anything that hurts your brain. And you just have to. You just have to know the list. And the more you love yourself, the more you will stop doing things that damage you, right? Because ultimately, it's not because you should do it. It's because you love yourself. And I love what Drew Carey said. Drew Carey lost a lot of weight.
He did.
And he said, eating crappy food isn't a reward. It's a punishment. And once you get your mind right, you totally understand what he's saying. Doing the right things is about love, and doing the wrong things is really about bad decision making and disdain for yourself. And so
what about like balance? What about like people who say, yeah, but I want a cheeseburger once a week or a cheat day, or I like ice cream. How bad could it be? What do people do in that sense?
Yeah, no, a lot of people go, well, everything in moderation,
Right.
which is the gateway thought to hell.
Well, I'm screwed.
Because then everything's moderation, right? Everything in moderation is just an excuse to cheat.
So everything in moderation gives you a moderate brain, essentially, maybe even less than.
Well, it'll give you a fast food brain or an ice cream brain.
Yeah, right. It's such a balance. I learned a lot just within the year of my father being sick. It was a very quick year. We got the cliff notes of the disease. He was diagnosed in 2017 and then he was gone in 2018. And it was just, us Googling and reading and trying to catch up with the progression of the disease. But posthumously for me, it was the most important aspect of my life. It was the most important defining moment for me to go, what am I doing to contribute to lessening the quality of my life down the road? Because I think we live in this culture where everything is just so immediate instant gratification that we don't really think or have the willpower to put in the effort to get that quality, because it is possible. And I was thinking, as you were talking about Drew Carey, once you stop eating a certain way and start living a certain way, it's almost like your body acclimates and it craves it. Like I crave healthy foods. I also crave mac and cheese. So I'm that's why I'm like, I need to get Doc on the line. I need to get Doc on the line, because there is still that aspect where there's this like tug and pull between my former self and my current self of wanting to get healthier and really learning what's going on in here and how much of what I'm doing is contributing to the degradation that's going on. That's what I think a lot of people are curious about. And the one question I thought of as you were talking, how much, it might be difficult to answer, how much physical effects are really causing the emotional effects within psychiatry? Like how much correlation between tumors and brain damage and actual physical harm can cause those emotional things?
Well, so let me tell you about a study from Australia. They looked at 2 outer islands. One had fast food restaurants, the other didn't. And they looked at the level of omega-3 fatty acids in their blood. And omega-3s are so important. They make up about 25% of brain cell membranes. And the island with fast food restaurants, the people had significantly low levels of omega-3 fatty acids in their blood and 5 times the level of depression.
You can't not make that correlation.
It's the food. Or there's a study from the Mayo Clinic where they looked at people who had a fat-based diet. So think avocados, nuts and seeds, fish, healthy oils.
All my favorite foods.
42% less risk of Alzheimer's disease. Then they looked at people at a protein-based diet. So think meat. 21% less risk of Alzheimer's disease. And then they looked at people who had a simple carbohydrate-based diet. Think bread, pasta, potatoes, rice, fruit juice, sugar. A 400% increased risk of Alzheimer's disease. And the devastation of Alzheimer's disease, if food can either help you prevent it or accelerate it, well, you have a choice.
Yes.
And so you might love mac and cheese. I love Rocky Road ice cream. I love fudge. My grandfather was a candy maker and I was named after him and he was my best friend. And, I love him. I don't want to be sick. That I love my mission. I love my grandchildren. That there's just not one thing as important as my health. And so, I can break up with Rocky Road ice cream, because, you know, once you start eating it, it's hard to stop. And it's actually engineered to be addictive.
Yeah, it's
And
just
Lay's potato was all out there with bet you can't eat just one, which is totally, you know, and, you know, think of Coca-Cola's big lie, open happiness, right? I mean, it's a lie because it increases depression when you increase inflammation and cancer and obesity and diabetes. It's not opening happiness, it's opening illness. But, you know, we fooled the population into believing short-term pleasure is where it's at. And I want to feel good now, right? I only eat foods I love that love me back.
What do you eat to enjoy? Like, is there any cheating at all? Do you have like I just imagine there's like a whole drawer full of Snickers bars in your desk.
No, I always tell people make one decision, not 30. And so if you don't buy it at the store, you don't have to fight with your ego at home. So make one decision, not 30. I love frozen blueberries. So I have
That's still healthy, Doc.
I have a cup of frozen blueberries every day.
You're an inspiration. Oh, frozen blueberries. I put those right in my margarita. You know, you made an interesting comment, and it might be backpedaling a little bit, but I just want to know your opinion on it. You mentioned that you think neuroscience, specifically psychiatry, your field, has been sort of stuck. And I just wondered, what do you equate that to? Because we did start this conversation talking about the physical brain. Is it because of the limitations of technology that have existed prior to this era?
Psychiatry and neurology got divorced about 100 years ago. And it was a really bad divorce. And neurology got the brain, and psychiatry got the mind. Mm-hmm. And psychiatry lost because ultimately schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, depression, ADHD, addictions, or brain diseases. And, you know, you can skid on the psychiatrist's couch for as long as you can, but if you don't fix their brain, you're not fixing their life. So I think of it often like hardware, the actual physical functioning of your brain, and software. Yes, you have to program it, right? And there's social connections or network connections. And ultimately you have to talk to people about why they want to be healthy. Why do you care? But it's not been part of our training or tradition. And when I started looking at the brain, it completely made the way psychiatrists diagnose people stupid. And that giving someone the diagnosis of depression is exactly like giving them the diagnosis of chest pain. It's a symptom that has many different causes. And just making diagnoses based on the symptom clusters is dumb. Because, you know, we've done huge studies and say that medications like Prozac work no better than placebo unless they're the most severely depressed.
Right.
So we need a new model. And if you think about it, most psychiatrists today, or family practice doctors, because they do way more psychiatry than psychiatrists do, they make diagnoses like they did in 1840 when Lincoln was depressed. So I love Lincoln because he failed repeatedly and then he became a wild success. But he suffered with depression, actually bad depression, suicidal depression. And in the winter of 1840, when he was really depressed, he went to his doctor. And how did his doctor diagnose him with melancholia, which is depression? Is he talked to him, he looked at him, he looked for symptom clusters, and then he treated him, which is exactly what happens now 100 and, I don't know, 80 years later or something. It's crazy.
It is crazy.
We should do better. So if you came to our clinic, one of the first things we do, of course, we talk to you. But you gotta look at your brain.
I'm outside the door now.
If your brain's not right, let's fix that first. And, you know, there are all sorts of reasons people struggle with depression. Like maybe they had a head injury. I saw a guy recently, in fact, Stephen Hilton posted his scans with me. And he's just this wonderful musician. He's worked on Transformers and a whole bunch of really great movies, but struggled with depression since he was a child. And I looked at his
that's so
brain,
sad.
and his brain clearly was a traumatic brain injury brain. And I'm like, so when did you have a brain injury? And he was 3 years old. He said it's the whole family lore that he fell down a flight of stairs when he was a child, and he was never quite right after that. And then getting on the program to repair his brain, his mood's better.
I believe it. It's, the fact that you're actually able to get in there and look and see an injury, you're just like, well, that's what's going on. And, I talk about people's why. You have a really strong why for your drive to fix people with your godson, who's your nephew.
My nephew, right?
That story, I just was like bawling watching your talk about that. And could you talk about that briefly?
So I started imaging in 1991, and I was so excited. We're going to change this field to make it more medical, more modern. But as I did it, I got no end of grief from my colleagues, and they'd call me bad names, and it made me feel off, because most people want to be part of the group,
right?
Human nature, because the group protects you. And now my group hated me. It was very unsettling for me, because I don't have these anymore, but I used to have these two flaws. One, I like people to like me, and I'm one of 7 children, and I had 5 sisters, and I didn't like it when people didn't like me, and I didn't like conflict. There was way too much in my house growing up.
You just described me.
And so here I am. I'm trying to do something new, and people don't like me, and I'm in the middle of a fight. And then in the April of 1995, I got a call late one night from my sister-in-law, Sherry, who told me my 9-year-old nephew, Andrew, who's my godson, so we are very close, attacks a little girl on the baseball field for no particular reason, out of the blue. And I'm horrified. And I'm like, Sherry, what else is going on with him? And she said, Danny, he's different. He's mean. He doesn't smile anymore. I went into his room and found 2 pictures he had drawn. One of them, he was hanging from a tree in a suicide attempt. The other picture, he's shooting other children.
Oh my Lord. I mean, what did you honestly think in that moment when you saw that? What was your first thought?
He had a left temporal lobe problem. Because
that's what you thought.
People. I thought something's the matter with this kid's left temporal lobe, because it's often associated with violence. And so I had her bring him to see me the next day. They lived 8 hours from me. I'm like, put him in the car.
We're gonna scan this kid.
If you don't look, you don't know.
Right.
And when we scanned him, he was actually missing the function of his left temporal lobe. Turned out he had a cyst the size of a golf ball occupying that space. And when the neurosurgeon, it took me a long time to find someone to actually take this seriously. And a neurosurgeon at UCLA, when he drained the cyst, his behavior completely went back to normal. And he said, if I wouldn't have pushed to get the surgery done, Andrew would have been dead in 6 months. And it was that moment, I just didn't care anymore if you liked me. And I was ready for the fight.
I mean, that's something that traditional psychiatry would never catch. It would absolutely never catch. He would be put on drugs that are just giving him side effects and symptoms, and he continue to, like you said, get worse and eventually die. And is there a way to put a percentage on what amount of people have, like how many people actually have like brain injuries that are causing psychiatric results?
Yeah, it's about 40%. It's horrifying. And they actually did a study. So undiagnosed brain injuries are a major cause of homelessness. So
Wow.
58% of the homeless men, this is a study from Toronto, and 42% of the homeless women had a significant brain injury before they were homeless. It's associated with substance abuse, depression, ADHD, suicide, panic attacks, and nobody knows. Like this thing with Stephen that I told you about. He'd been to psychiatrists, he'd been on medication, he tried to get well. And the problem was when you try to get well and you don't, it demoralizes.
Right.
You. And
especially like you said, with the way it's even the terminology alone and just the stigma that is surrounding it, it's like a lost cause.
Right. But if you see it not as your mind, which you think of as your soul, but it's my brain, then you can be better. I'm in a new docu-series with Justin Bieber. I've been Justin's doctor for many years. And, you know,
and Miley's. I'm a huge Miley fan.
And yeah, I love Miley too. But Justin, you know, like all the young superstars I see, sometimes they'll do what I ask them to do, and a lot of times they won't. And but Justin came into my office, and he was really struggling, and he got it. He said to me, he said, "I get it. My brain is an organ, like my heart is an organ."
Right.
He told me I had heart problems. I'd do anything you said. Now I'm going to start doing everything you said. And he got better. And I'm so proud of him. But we need to stop calling these things mental illnesses.
Right, because the cause, I mean, if 40% of the cause is physical, it's a totally different ball game. It's a totally different ball game. And with
that's the heart injury, right? There's also infectious disease causes of mental health issues. There's toxins like mold exposure. I'm in a movie called Moldy because Dave Asprey, the founder of Bulletproof Coffee, came to me. His brain looked like crap.
Really? Wait, when was this before Bulletproof? Because I go to his labs in Santa Monica.
Before.
Okay.
Yeah, no, way before. This is like 14 years ago. I have his brain before and after. And he's like, "Why does my brain look like crap?" And it turned out he had mold. And so, did you have a flood in your house? Are you living in an old building? Could mold be contributing to your anxiety? And so there are all these causes. And so in the end of mental illness, bright minds is the mnemonic. And that helps us know, is it blood flow, retirement and aging, inflammation, genetics, head trauma, toxins, you know, all these things. You know, if you don't sleep right, it's a major cause of mental health issues. And now all the blue light coming into our eyes keeps us up. We're addicted to the gadgets. It's a bad thing.
It is a bad thing. And it's, you know, I was just thinking, all of the things you need to implement into your life to sort of start to get on this path where you really, for me, I feel so much clearer and I'm able to manage stressful times better. I'm able to, I find myself slowing down these days and processing things slower but clearer. Not slower in the sense where I'm processing them slow. I'm actually taking my time and I have less anxiety because normally I make these rash decisions and I'm this hyperactive person. And I found out from taking your brain quiz on your website that I'm going to, just from the little bit of conversation that we've had, can you guess what brain type I am off of your quiz?
Well, 2 is the first one that comes to mind.
I'm a 2. And the description, I'm like, that's me. That's who I am. I'm creative, and focus is the hardest thing for me. Not when I'm podcasting, because this is enjoyable and I'm curious and all of that. But in general, focus has been my entire life the bane of my existence. And I'm a very smart person. When I apply myself, you know, I was able to get through high school with almost A's, but that was me just cramming it in at the last minute. Is there something that is a consistent cause of a lack of focus with someone like me that you can just, sort of blindly diagnose over this podcast?
Well, there could be all sorts of reasons.
Did my mom push me down a flight of stairs when I was a kid, is what I'm asking you.
That would be one. Or, you come from people who are spontaneous and creative and distracted. So, you look at genes because that's very important. And then you look at, well, how healthy were your mom and dad before they had you? Because that sort of matters. And how healthy was your mom when she hatched you?
She was smoking about a pack a day, Doc, and I think there are a couple wine coolers mixing around in there. She drinks wine from the box now, but they were definitely bottled back then.
Yeah, and that totally could have impacted your brain. And so if your dad had Alzheimer's disease and when you were being developed, your mom was poisoning you, it's like...
She was. I don't mean to laugh, but it's like, you're right. It was like Munchausen by boxed wine.
but the brain is so cool.
Yeah.
It's so wonderful. Every day, your brain makes 700 new baby hippocampal cells. And the hippocampus is Greek for seahorse because the part of your brain looks like a seahorse. And every day you're either growing those baby seahorses and making them big, or you're murdering them with your behavior.
Your alcohol, your
marijuana, bad food, not sleeping, hanging out with stressful guys, all of those things. And it comes down to one question. So if you can just write this question down. Is this good for my brain or bad for it?
Ever since I heard you say that, one of the first times that I discovered you, I find myself, and it's habitual. You have to get used to it and create the new routine, the new pattern of, the behavior. But I do that sometimes, and only when it's something where the answer is no. It's like subconsciously, I know it's not good for me. And my brain's like, hey, do you need this pumpkin pie right before bed? No, I don't. But I'm still, I'm like I said, I'm still trying to manage the, everything in moderation lifestyle. I'm at the point where I just took 2 bites of the pumpkin pie instead of eating the whole slice. So I think that's an upgrade.
Right? And I didn't get to be as good as I am now, like overnight.
Right.
I mean, it was a process, but when I read a study from the University of Pittsburgh that said as your weight goes up, the size of your brain goes down, I went, holy shit. I'm like, okay, I got it. I'm gonna lose, because I'd tried to lose the extra 20 or 30 pounds my whole adult life, because I come from a family of fat people.
That's an opening line for a book, Doc. That's your memoir.
And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do this, And then it worked, because I don't want to have a smaller brain, right? You just have to find your motivation.
Yes.
And your dad gave you great motivation, because you don't want to lose your brain.
No.
But in the meantime, so this is not just something, how old are you?
I'm 38. I just turned 38. I had to think about it. I just turned 38 September 16th.
Yeah. So even though you're trying to prevent something 40 years down the line, guess what? If you do it now, your decisions will be better.
Right.
Your energy will be better. Your career will be better.
Right.
Because you make better decisions. And so when your brain is right, your relationships are better. Your money is better because you make better decisions. Your health is better. And so you really have to get into, this is not about deprivation. That when I make the wrong choices, I'm depriving me of what I really want.
Wow.
Because I want energy. I want good decisions. I want to be the leader of my family. And I damn sure don't want to be dependent on someone else. I want to be in charge of my life. And, I know some of the people listening have had to have talks with their parents about, you really shouldn't be driving. And you really should think about putting you in a home. And quite frankly, I don't want my children to have that talk with me. But the only way that's going to happen is if I make decisions now. And so it's a benefit now to you, energy, memory, better decisions, and later. And that's ultimately where you always want to be. Does this help me feel good now and later? And so I have a company called Brain MD where we make supplements for the brain. But
I was going to ask you about supplements. That's great.
We also make chocolate and
fudge.
Not fudge, but we make something called Brain on Joy. So think of a Hershey bar, but has no sugar and no dairy. Tastes great. 9 grams of fiber, and we make a chocolate coconut bar. So Almond Joys used to always be one of my favorite. But again, coconut is great for the brain.
MCT oil.
The MCT
multi-chain triglyceride.
Very good. And so there is no suffering. It's just
right.
You already have habits, right? And do the habits serve you or do they hurt you?
Right.
Do the habits help you wake up 100% every morning, or do they make you feel hungover? Right? It's just what do you want?
Yeah.
And does your behavior get you what you want? So I have a book coming out in March called Your Brain is Always Listening.
Do you sleep? How do you sleep with all these books and clinics and candy bars, not candy, chocolate supplement bars? How do you sleep?
Well, I just have a lot of energy because I do the right things and I have a good team.
That's great.
But in it, there's sort of a new approach to addiction that everybody goes, AA step 1, you have to admit your life is out of control. And I'm like, no, that's step 2. Step 1 is, well, what the heck do you want? What do you want? Relationships, work, money, physical, emotional, spiritual health. What do you want? I mean, really sit with that and then ask yourself, is my behavior getting me what I want? So it's not what you should want, right? I mean, you don't want what I want, but what do you want? And then is my behavior getting me what I want? And that's really mental health. You know what you want, and then you can act in a way that's consistent with what you want. I treated this sex addict once, and I just dearly loved him. And I taught him these 2 words, then what? If I do this, then what happens? If I do this, I'm going to get divorced. Or I met him actually when we did the Dr. Phil show and his wife had a gun. If I do this, I might die. I feel
like the only way to get on the Dr. Phil show is if you have a gun or a baby. So it sounds like pretty par for the course. You can't do anything with the gun.
So then what? But you have to know what you want.
People don't ask that question enough. We live so fast. I mean, I'm speaking from my own perspective, but that question is such an important question that you should start the day that way. I also have read, and this is something I've implemented into my life, journaling your thoughts is such a great way to sort of filter out a lot of that fogginess that I wake up with in the morning sometimes. These like weird, doubtful, just loud, rude, just this rude bitch who's just in my ear. And I'm like, why are you here? Like, it's 6 a.m. Let me have some
the reason
coffee.
She's there is if you already have a sleepy brain. So type 2s usually have sleepy frontal lobes.
What does that mean?
It means a little bit less blood flow to the front part of your brain. And when you just wake up, your brain's even sleepier than it normally is. And if you just get up and go do something, you'll shut her up. But what I do every morning, and it helps me so much, is I say to myself, as soon as my feet hit the floor, today is going to be a great day. And then my unconscious mind finds why it's going to be a great day. And we have 3 kids in the house here with us, and we do that at breakfast. Today's going to be a great day. Why is today going to be a great day for you? And then before I go to bed at night, I say a prayer, and then I go, what went well today? And I put myself to sleep every night. And it's habitual, right? We all have habits.
Yeah.
Do they serve you or do they hurt you? And my dad died in May. And
I'm so sorry.
it was a really sad, hard day. But when I went to bed that night, because it's my habit, I went, what went well today? And initially my brain's like, seriously? And then I thought about, there was an interaction between my mom and the police officer because he died at home. And it was so sweet and so tender and so funny because, you know, they had to investigate the death. And she's like, do you think I have a boyfriend? It was so sweet. And then, you know, I thought about that, and I thought about the hundreds of texts I got from my friends and his friends. And even because we live in a dark time, right? I mean, with the pandemic, the societal unrest, the political nonsense, we live in a stressful time. But where you bring your attention will determine how you feel. So you can focus on what's awesome, or you can focus on what's awful. And one will help you feel awesome, and the other one will help you feel awesome. And you have a choice. Yes. This is one of the major decisions that you can make every day. Yes. You know, am I going to focus on what I love about my life or what I hate about my life? And it's training. That you have to train your mind. And people think of discipline as a bad thing, but it's either hard, the discipline of doing the right thing, or the punishment of, the chronic, long-term, early death punishment of doing the wrong things.
It is such a interesting thing that happens, though, ever since I started to eat healthier. And I've always enjoyed healthy foods, and getting that much more healthier wasn't too much of a leap for me. But the interesting thing to me is when you start to leave out foods that aren't good for you and then reintroduce them into your life, you notice their effect on you.
Right.
And it's almost, I started to keep like a journal of what I was eating and saw the link between what I ate the day before and the mood I woke up with. And you're literally like, I just ate myself into anger. I just ate myself into depression. And so it's interesting once you see that, and like what you're referring to is like having that sort of thought in your mind, I'm going to wake up, today's going to be a good day. Those thoughts have entered my mind when the previous day I ate clean and I had a good day of, meditation and movement and creating and contributing and all those different things that sort of, make up a good day. It's just really cool to see that. And one of the reasons why I was so drawn to speak with you is because I want to further my education and also educate the public on this, because it's not something that is necessarily readily available because of the history of the field. And, I Googled SPECT. Okay. I'm going to see if I can say this properly. Single photon emission computed tomography.
Good job.
Yes. Is that the main scan that you use?
We do too, but SPECT is the big one, because it gives us this 3D look at blood flow and activity in the brain. And yeah, I love SPECT.
What's the first thing when you take a scan, what is the first thing you're drawn to? What's the first thing that you're looking for?
Is it healthy or not? Does it work too hard or not hard enough? Is there emotional trauma? Is there physical trauma? I published a study on 21,000 people, and I can see the difference between emotional trauma, your emotional or limbic brain's just on fireworks too hard, or physical trauma, where you can see damage to certain parts of the brain.
And how do those things correlate a lot? The physical trauma versus the emotional trauma? I would imagine those two things are kind of hand in hand.
Well, we have separate groups of people who've only had physical trauma or only emotional trauma, but a lot of times there's both. So we've done a lot of work with soldiers, and
PTSD.
so yes, they have blast injuries, but you also get emotionally traumatized when you're in a tank that's had an explosion. So they tend to go hand in hand. Or if you grew up in an abusive alcoholic home, it's the chronic emotional trauma, and you've probably been thrown against the wall, 8, 10, 50 times. So they can go together. One of the interesting things the scans have taught me is it's taught me that it's easy to call people bad. It's harder to ask why. And they're very helpful for forgiveness. That, yeah, my dad was a real jackass.
Oh.
He, was a Vietnam vet and had trauma. I mean, it helped me understand and help my patients understand, so they just don't hold on to the hurt. That when you can understand the hurt, it just lessens the pain.
So has it made you more compassionate? I would imagine you came into it pretty compassionate because of your godson, but I would imagine that you're very emotionally attached to your work at this point in your career.
Yeah, it's sort of hard to separate it. If you date any of my children, I'm scanning you. Right?
Well, if any of your children are single and of age, I am available. You might want to scan my brain first.
Now, if you hook up with any of them, that's the next thing. My youngest, who's 17, she starts dating this kid, and he's very sweet, but there's suicide in his family. And I'm like, you haven't seen the clinic yet. It's time to see it.
Did you take her boyfriend, Doc?
It took me almost a year to get him into the clinic. But, once he did, it was so helpful. And on the right supplements, his brain is better and he's better. And so I have 4 children, and all 4 of their partners.
It's like the reverse. It's like where a kid comes and meets a daddy as a shotgun. You've got a SPECT scan. You're like, come on, let me check out your brain. I'm not worried. I just have to see what's going on the inside.
Right.
Well, we have a point of contention we have to discuss, Doc. The big M in the cloud, marijuana. Talk to me about marijuana use and its connection to deterioration or whatever you found in your work.
And I just have to start with, I have no dog in the fight, right? I don't have a marijuana company, and, I can just tell you what I've seen. And I've seen more brains than anybody in the history of the world.
Literally.
I've been smoking pot. And I published a study on 1,000 pot smokers. Every area of their brain is lower compared to healthy. Every single one.
Now there's not like, what about the pituitary? What about the way?
Everything I see is small. It's less active. And then I published a study. It's the world's largest imaging study on 62,454 scans looking at how the brain ages. So from 9 months to 105. And so I know the pattern of aging really well. And then I looked, what accelerates aging? Schizophrenia ages the brain faster than anything. The next was marijuana, that marijuana prematurely aged the brain. And it seemed, in our study, it was worse than alcohol and worse than smoking.
What?
And
Doc, I need to see the receipts. I need to see I got my brush. I need to see the receipts. Oh, I can give up cake.
Think about
give up cake for you. I don't know about the blunt.
Teenagers who smoke marijuana have a 450% increased risk of developing psychosis. That's a bad thing. Teenagers who smoke marijuana in their 20s have a higher incidence of anxiety, depression, and suicide. Is it worse than alcohol? Probably not. There's way more, drunk driving accidents and way more physical abuse with alcohol. But, if they're both bad, why do we have to say one's worse than the other one? And I'm not a fan. Now, some of my doctors are fans of CBD, that they use it and they find it helpful. And the CBD proponents go, oh, but it's not psychoactive, which is complete crap. Of course it's psychoactive. Decreases anxiety, helps you sleep. That means it's psychoactive.
Right, and it's doing something to the brain.
And, probably for a lot of people, it's fine. And I just like to see more research. And there's so many other non-toxic things that help anxiety and help you sleep. Well, why don't we start there first? And so you have to come to the clinic and we have to walk. And if your brain is healthy, who cares? If your brain is not healthy, my goal is for you to develop brain envy, for you to love your brain, and then just do what's good for it.
I'm willing to give up I will never look twice at Rocky Road. And I enjoy a drive down Rocky Road, Doc. Let me tell you, I let the windows down. I take the top off. We're enjoying the breeze down Rocky Road. But if there's just a joint in the room, and that's the irony, because the joint sometimes goes hand in hand with the cookies and the mac and cheese and all that other stuff, which is such a strange thing to make you want to do after smoking, that you want to eat so much. That's one of the things that I have. But I am willing to give up the sweets if I can just hang on to a joint. That's my, out of all of my endeavors to improve my brain. But I might be, I can't even go out on a limb and say that you could change my mind, but you might be the only person on this earth that could make me walk away from a blunt. You might be.
Well, it just depends how much you love your brain. I would say no better, do better.
And now here's something I'll divulge to you. I didn't smoke weed as a child. As a teenager, I drank here and there. I definitely had more of an alcohol thing than anything, but I basically started smoking marijuana within the past 6-7 years.
So after the age of 25.
Yes.
Is
that worse?
No, it's better. It's better because your brain continues to develop as a girl until you're about 25. For guys, it's a little bit later. And so if you could not poison your brain while it's developing, that is a better thing. And that may be why it didn't have an intense negative effect for you. But, because it's legalized everywhere, and I'm a fan of legalization, it's like, please don't put people who smoke marijuana in jail. That's just stupid.
It's just so stupid. Yes. I'm happy you feel that way.
Let's not do that. But at the same time, let's not say it's good for us, because it delays development. And there's just nothing more important than the health and development of your brain.
Right.
And so I worry because, Joe Biden actually got shamed in the debates by Cory Booker when Biden was like, I'm not a big fan of just legalizing it everywhere. And Booker basically shamed him. He said, dude, are you high? And that was just a horrifying moment for me, for someone who wanted to be thoughtful, cautious, and not just jump on the bandwagon. Oh, it's innocuous. It's like candy. Well, we already know candy is going to kill you early.
Yes.
That, I'm just concerned. But again, you're just more likely to see me if you smoke marijuana than not. So maybe I'm in favor of it.
No, but it does clarify that it's something that's a little bit more detrimental in the developmental stages as opposed to enjoying it as an adult in the morning with my coffee, as I do. And I still function. It doesn't put me in the couch. I'm a high functioning stoner, as they say, even though I'm not really a stoner because I don't like to get high. But is there something with marijuana, when people smoke marijuana, if they have a predisposition to schizophrenia or any sort of mental illness, can marijuana exacerbate those symptoms?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, and it's horrible and very few people know it, but all the psychiatrists I know have seen it.
And that's a very serious thing because schizophrenia does not look fun. It looks very terrifying and also hard to deal with as a loved one. It looks like a very hard illness to manage.
Yeah, but with proper treatment, people can do really well. And, and there's so many different brain patterns for schizophrenia. It's one of the big lessons that I learned. All psychiatric disorders, bipolar disorder, depression, schizophrenia, ADHD, there are multiple things going on in the brain. And when you look, you get a better idea of what to do for people. And the first thing I want to do for all my patients, let's get your brain healthy. And odds are your mind's going to be better. And I'm not opposed to medicine. I'll totally give you medicine. It's just not the first and only thing I think of.
That's why I'm attracted to what you do and your approach to this field that, as we know, our brain is such a mysterious world and it's a universe in of itself. There was this really beautiful article in Time magazine where they equated the brain to the universe, where it's very hard for us to sort of explore it, and it's in its own darkness, and there's all these beautiful lights and synapses shooting off, and there's so much going on that we don't know. That it's really exciting for me to learn and be able to sit with you and talk about this, because it really is a new frontier for brain health, what you're doing and how you're approaching it. And I think I read somewhere that your clinics take a brain body approach to providing people with their overall brain health, that's groundbreaking.
Yeah, no, we always talk about these four big circles. We want to know the biology of your brain and body, the psychology or how you think, and talk about killing the ants, the automatic negative thoughts, the social circle, who you spend time with, and the spiritual circle, which is, well, why the heck do you care? Why do you think you're on the planet? And that approach really works. I'm going to have to run in just a minute, but
yes,
such a joy to talk to you.
It is, honestly, it's so encouraging for me to know that there are other options and just to learn different ways to approach the day. So before I let you go, one thing I want to ask you to tell our listeners is maybe a few things they can do today to start to make their brain healthier.
So that one question, is this good for my brain or bad for it? Ask yourself whenever you come to make a decision. And you find that when you know the answer, you start doing better things if you love yourself. When you start the day, today is going to be a great day. Whenever you feel sad or mad or nervous or out of control, write down what you're thinking. Ask yourself if it's true. Multiple vitamin, fish oil, vitamin D, all are things that help to support your brain. And when it comes to food, the more colors, natural colors, not Skittles, you can get in your mouth, the better. So eat blue things and red things and yellow things. That just seems, and never go on a low-fat diet, because 60% of the solid weight of your brain is fat. So if someone calls you a fathead, say thank you.
Delicious. This has been such a joy. Where can people make an appointment the website and anything else you want to promote to our listeners.
So amenclinics.com, amen like the last word in a prayer, clinics.com, or BrainMD, that's our supplement company. And my new book that's out in stores now is called The End of Mental Illness, because it's not mental, it's brain.
This has been such a delight. I will put all the information in the description for everybody listening, links clickable, and I'll even put the link for you to take the brain quiz so you can learn what brain number you are that can help you get on the fast track to brain health. Dr. Amen, you have been amazing, and I hope we can talk again, and I will be at your clinic as soon as possible.
Well, let me know. Such a joy to spend time with you.
It really was. I can't wait for you to take a look on the inside.
It's going to be exciting.
It's going to be so exciting. Thank you, doctor.